Hi class, this is course 2, lesson 35, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing decimal numbers. Okay, so you do not need to write this. You can if you want to, but you do not need to. But today we are going to be able to add and subtract decimal numbers. We're going to multiply decimal numbers, and we are going to divide decimal numbers by a whole number. And again, this should all be review. You know how to do this. It's just a refresher to get us a starting point for the rest of the lessons. When you add and subtract decimal numbers, you line up the decimals, add zeros as placeholders if necessary. And here are two problems that we will do together. So we have 1 and 2/10, and we need to line up all the decimals. So I'm just going to write these over here. Plus 3 and 45/100, line up the decimals, and 23 and 6/10. Okay, now I want to point out that if I had a number like +4, the decimal would be here, and so a whole number like that would line up right here. Okay, so make sure that you line up whole numbers in the correct spot. But we don't want to do the +4. We want to add what we had. So let me change, the blue doesn't show up so well. This can kind of get jumbled up on your paper here. If you do not write in nice columns and rows, then you will want to make sure that you use zeros as placeholders. This makes it really clear that you're adding 5 plus 2 zeros, instead of if you wrote the 2 over a little bit, it might be not very clear. So again, just add like normal. 5 plus zeros is 5, 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 2 is 12, and we will carry the 1, but the decimal stays here. 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 2 is 8, and a 2. So the answer to this is 28 and 25/100. Okay, let's do the subtraction. We still need to line up the decimals, and here's where I was talking about. You need to know where that decimal is, right? So the decimal is right after the whole number. If it doesn't look like there's a decimal, there's one hiding, it's right after the last number. Okay, and we need to line up the decimal because we're subtracting, and we're going to go ahead and subtract. Now this is where you definitely need to add zeros as placeholders, because you cannot just write down 875. You are subtracting, so you need to subtract 5 from this 0, and you can't do that unless you borrow first. So we need to borrow from the 2, make that a 1. This becomes a 10, which then becomes a 9. This becomes a 10, which then becomes a 9, and then this becomes a 10. Now we can subtract. 5 from 10 is 5. 7 from 9 is 2. 8 from 9 is 1. Decimal point. 1 minus 0 is 1, and then we still have that other 1. So 12 minus 875 thousandths is 11 and 125 thousandths. So when adding and subtracting, remember to line up the decimals. When you multiply decimal numbers, you multiply as if there were no decimal in the numbers at all. Then at the very end, you count up the decimal places in the factors, and then you put that number of decimal places in your answer. So I have a problem here. It's 4 and 2/10 times 24/100. So I'm going to go ahead and set this problem up like this and like this. Now again, I do not line up the decimals. I treat this problem like there are no decimals at all. 4 times 2, 8. 4 times 4, 16. Put a 0. 2 times 2, 4. 2 times 4, 8, and I add. Notice I have not put any decimals in here. Do not put decimals yet. Add 8. 6 plus 4 is 10. Carry the 1. 8, 9, 10. Okay, now count up decimals. There's 1 decimal place here, and there are 2 decimal places here, so combined there should be 3. So 3 decimal places go in my product, And where should that decimal go? One place would be here, 2 and 3. So my answer to 4 2/10 times 24 hundredths is 1 and 8 thousandths. Okay, so again, when you multiply decimal numbers, do not put any decimals in this adding step, only in the end, and you count up the decimal places in your factors. When you divide by a whole number, do not use a remainder. Add zeros behind the decimal if necessary to continue. So we have 14 and 4/10 divided by 6. So we need to put the 14 and 4/10 inside the box, and we're going to divide. So 6 will go into 14, let's see, twice, leaving me 6 times 2 is 12, and so I subtract and I get a 2 and a 4. 6 will go into 24 4 times. Now 24 and subtract 0. Now where was my decimal? It belongs right here. It just goes up above. So this will be very important that you write the number in your quotient where it belongs above your dividend. Last example here, 3 and 4/10 divided by 5. Again, put the 3 and 4/10 inside the box, and let's see, 0 decimal point. The 5 will not go into the 3 at all, so I'm going to put a 0 in front of my decimal just to keep things organized there for myself. 5 will go into 34 6 times, so 6 times 5 is 30, and I subtract. And now this is the point where we would normally write a fractional remainder, but since we're in decimals, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to add a 0 and continue until it repeats or terminates. 5 goes into 48 times, so it looks like I'm done here. Okay. Again, the decimal, because this is a whole number, your divisor is a whole number, the decimal just goes directly up into your quotient and continue until you have a repeating decimal or a terminating decimal. Okay, so that was just a quick review of operations with decimals. If you have any questions, please let me know.